Gentlemen, gentlemen, Archie. Gentlemen, could I just have your attention for a moment, please? It is getting to that time when you can start setting your watches. But before we call upon the captain to say a word or two, I'd like to ask Declan Nernan, as I said earlier on, he of the dry and pithy wit, to introduce our captain, Paul. Declan Nernan.
Mr. President, Mr. Captain, President of the GUI, Chairman of the Leinster branch, guests, gentlemen, you are very welcome. You know, after Paul asked me to propose a toast tonight, he explained to those around him that if you missed his toast to my brother in 2008, you have a brilliant chance to miss him again this year. I'm glad to see so many of you didn't take him up on that offer. Recently, somebody in the bar at Ladbrokes, where all of our former great golfers preached about the secrets of their success, somebody said, you know, that Captain Williams is some gobshite. I thought to myself, probably what you were thinking, hold on a minute now, you want to be a bit more specific, there's been two of them. You see, Paul was the first captain to follow his brother in that role, and adding to confusion, a brother also closely associated with the letter P. And Paul is the first captain to follow his wife, who's a past lady captain. Clearly we're members of a very forgiving club. A little background. In a research discussion with Paul, in order to do this toast tonight, he revealed to me that he had once been a man trapped in a woman's body. But that period of his life ended when he was born in 1953. Over the following years, Paul was to become the eldest of four boys: Paul, David, Aidan and John. Now his dad, Brendan, was an active member of our club and a keen golfer who died very unexpectedly and tragically in a medical misadventure in 1967 when Paul was just 13. And in a strange twist of fate, Paul was elected a juvenile member of our club on the day of his dad's funeral almost 50 years ago. His mother Mary was a very formidable woman who needed all of her drive and spirit to bring up four small boys on a meagre income. She was a strong-willed woman, and she has been, I believe, the dominant influence on all of these lads' lives. Four boys and a driven woman formed what anybody on the outside would have thought was a normal family, but those of us who know the boys sometimes wonder. Paul, direct, mulish, meticulous and punctual. Punctuality being a trait he particularly likes in others, and in this regard he's worked with Philip Murphy this year to enhance Philip's ability to interpret the face of his watch. Paul is most likely to say, I've considered it and thank you, but I've decided to do it my way. It also would say things like, I appreciate all of your suggestions, please place them in the receptacle down the corridor and make sure you flush it. He once described himself as, I may have my faults, but being wrong is not one of them. David, alternatively, is pleasant, placid and easygoing and good company. A former captain of Arklow Golf Club, one cannot but wonder how he escaped and left us with the other three. Aidan, outwardly pleasant and courteous, but at times wired to the moon. And John, of course, who makes Aidan look completely normal. And of course, John, as a young boy, wanted a pet zebra, and he wanted to call him Spot. Go figure. In 1971, after school at Sing Street, Paul wanted him to go into the cement business because she felt he was a good mixer. But he yearned for the bright lights, the cut and thrust of deal making, and the high octane boardroom, so he joined AIB in 1971 in the securities department in Foster Place. He wasn't long in Foster Place when he heard of a pretty young thing from Cork who worked in AIB Dame Street. She was called Dorney, and he was immediately interested. It was only years after they were married that he admitted that his initial interest stemmed from the fact that he had misheard her surname. Paul Williams married Sheila Dorney in 1975. Both very young people at that time, and they had 41 happy years since then. 39 for him and 2 for her. Family have observed that at home, Paul rules the roost, but Sheila rules the rooster. 3 children, Stephen, Claire and Kevin. All 3 have an affinity with water, but not all of them will go on the boat with Dad, because he gets delusions of Stalin only to the right. Stephen is an accomplished windsurfer who is now grappling with the different challenge of consistently applying the club face to the golf ball. Claire, having migrated back to the real capital of Ireland, is a long-distance swimmer who feels that this escape mechanism allows her the occasional foray onto Dad's boat. And Kevin is a computer nerd and scuba diver who's taken a keen interest in ensuring the continued global diversity of the animal kingdom, and by replicating much of the work of Noah and his ark in the leafy environs of his garden at Rathfarnham. 2 of the children now work for AIB, and the other, Kevin, prefers to stay in a computer research in the hopes of actually buying the bank one day, once of course that Jim Pender has fixed it. Now, a bit about work. Having joined AIB in the securities department, Paul soon volunteered to work in a fledgling part of the bank that sought to harness the power of complex modern technology. In 1973, he transferred to the high-tech world of computers, a world of water-cooled hard disks, air-conditioned room and punched cards, where, when combined with millions of pounds and many, many skilled operatives, generated the processing power of an iPhone 4. Paul's continuing education took him to a diploma in woodworking from Dundrum Tech, where he thought it might assist him in carving out a better career. And later he took a computer science degree at TCD before he went on to head up the bank's operations division, where he had hundreds of staff and millions of euro, much as he sees his role at the castle today. In the noughties, he made a long trek to Bank Centre, where he became responsible for procurement for the bank, and in this role he sought to implement a strict policy of central cost control and undertook many punishing travel schedules to destinations such as the Olympic Games, rugby internationals, FA Cup finals and other equally stressful destinations. They have said that there was nothing that he would not do for the shareholders of the bank, and in fact many feel that's exactly what he did. Now, his sporting career. Paul played rugby, poorly. It's said that when he was younger he had the body of a god, Buddha. And his rugby nickname, Porky, gives us an indication that he was once more regarded for his circumference and bulk than his agility and athleticism. Once described as deceptively slow, he partnered Jim Glennon in an interbank second row, but he soon retired from the game in favour of vociferously advising professional coaches about how the game should really be played. Now, sailing. In the 1980s, the AIB Sports and Social Club introduced staff to the joys of sailing, and Paul took to this like a pig to water. He joined the Dunleary Motor Yacht Club and then sought further progress into the more rarefied yacht clubs down the harbour. At one time he expressed an interest in becoming a rear admiral in the George, but Sheila said she wasn't keen on him going into town at night. But he did join the Royal St George Yacht Club, and he stayed there until they brought in a taxable BIK, and that took a little gloss off the extravagance. He's owned 3 boats so far, each larger and more grand than the previous. And all named, it seems to me, in reaction to a diminishing libido. The boats were named Heidi, Enigma and Elusive. A stunning 42-foot motor yacht maintained to operating theatre standards, wherein he displays all of the human kindness and understanding of Captain Bligh. Anyone marking the wooden table or, for instance, putting the butter knife in the marmalade, well, they better be able to swim. Golf. Paul was elected a juvenile member in 1967, on the same day I was elected, but we never got to play much golf together because he was class 2, or possibly class 3, but I never saw much of him anyway. In 1971, and reaching 18 years of age, he wasn't going to college, so he had to decide at that time whether to become a full member or to leave, basically, because the only choice you had at that time was university member or full member. So realizing that the payment of an entrance fee at that time wasn't really compatible with his responsibility to his mother, who had 3 younger children to rear, he decided to resign his membership, and he so informed our manager at the time, Joe Manahan. Now, Joe, being older and wiser, reported this to Mrs. Williams, who immediately instructed the secretary to file the letter in his wastepaper bin, and came up here, paid the entry fee, and sparked a monumental war in the Williams household when young Paul became very aggrieved at what he thought was meddling in his adult affairs. However, he stayed. He once played golf to a 6th handicap, though not for long. Here, here. Today he has a shot on every hole in the golf course except the 13th, and he's working on remedying this glaring omission. A claim to fame, and everything is relative, is that he once won a Barton Cup match 10-8 in the company of Keevan Mangan, his longtime pal, and with whom he also played 4 balls along with a grumpy Don O'Rourke. 2 Bloom Cups is the mark of the great talent for the game, and he still lives in hope that someday Martin Keane might recognise him should some raging epidemic rob him of many of his first choice players. He's an enthusiastic bridge player, where he continues to take direction from Miss Dorney, and he's delighted to have found late on an aspect of his life where finesse can play a part. He enjoys wine. He also enjoys a glass of red wine, and he has a very simple approach to this. Open the bottle, let it breathe. If it doesn't appear to be breathing, give it mouth to mouth. Now, in the 80s and 90s, owing probably to a stalled career, I had time to meddle on committee, but Paul was busy working, ensuring the continued stability of the Irish banking sector. In recent years, he's had a lot more time in his hands, and this has allowed him to stand for election again in 2011. Having been inflicted on the House Committee in the first year, he was promoted to chairman of the course on his second year, where he set about repairing much of the impact of a recent and headstrong chairman, also associated with the letter P. He formed a very effective bond with our handsome young superintendent, who complemented, and that is, with an eye and a knee, his strengths. Paul Fitzgerald knew how to present the course, and Paul knew how to stop the board interfering with Paul's plan. So it's fairly simple, really. Whereas the previous P. Williams in that role was more associated with the secateurs, this Williams was more associated with the chainsaw, as visitors remarked when playing our newly enlightened 7th and 11th holes. One thing you'd say about Paul, he's good with staff, so long as they do it his way. Although he's not known as a great listener. However, this sort of single-minded attention to detail and discipline doesn't always engender complete loyalty or happiness. It was recently, I think, during the summer, that one long-serving member was heard to remark, "I'd really like to smack him in the head again." And somebody said again, he says, "Yeah, I really wanted to smack him in the head yesterday as well." Now, as Billy will attest, the captain likes flags. He likes flags to be just so, and is completely intolerant of those who have not had the benefit of master mariner training and who somehow just don't get what all the fuss is about. And I have to say, that's pretty much all of us, I would guess. I think as captain, he's been 110% committed to every team, to every event, and every player who wears the crest. He was in Portrush last year when Alex made his international debut. He was in Tramore last year when Alex so narrowly missed out on winning the close. This year he was in County Sligo as Dan nearly brought home the West. He was in Ballyaliffin when Alex finally won his close. and he just travels everywhere. He's been at every inter-club match, every dog fight, every contest, and he's attended more funerals than Jody Flanagan. And in fairness to the staff who work with him, they were happy to facilitate him in all of this travel, and particularly if that included long overseas trips. No travel was ruled out by the staff, and they confirmed to him that in his absence they'd miss him, but they tried to get on with their jobs. He shared a lot of good days, and dare I say it, a lot of good nights with Bernie Murray, his lady captain. He has received as captain a major championship trophy, 2 Leinster pennants, and a very rare green pennant. And he's been beside Bernie as she welcomed her ILGU members back with their own pennant. I think the success of this partnership will be hard to follow. I believe he's enjoyed his year. I believe we've enjoyed his year. And now, nearing the end of his reign, he's told me that he sees himself as presidential material. But he is concerned that Michael D will go for a second term. Gentlemen, would you please stand up, raise your glasses and drink a toast to Paul Williams, our captain.